Hey folks, Brendan here from the Bluelight Facebook group, going live to you in the Bluelight Facebook group to over 22,000 of you now, which is just incredible. So in this Facebook Live, I'm going to give you a few updates about police recruitment in 2023 and why I feel as though it's about to fall off a cliff edge. Now, if you're watching this on the replay, check the links below to the Facebook group if you're not part of it, and also check the links below to all the different services I provide. The Trustpilot reviews, thank you all of you for the amazing Trustpilot reviews. We are still so five-star, just amazing five-star reviews on Trustpilot, so thank you everyone for providing those. So just whilst those of you who are on the Facebook group now are just starting to join us, I'm seeing Olivia, Lauren, Danielle, David, Simon, who are just starting to join us. So I want to give you an update about where I think police recruitment is going in 2023. It's good news for some of you, and for some of you it might not be good news. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, really. So one of the things that was always predictable is that the big boom in police recruitment was always going to come to an end soon. Because the 20,000 uplift was announced over 3 years ago, and it comes to an end this March. Now, if you're watching this on the replay, it's February. It's mid-February 2023. The end of March, the funding finishes. This is £18 billion worth of funding for the police service to recruit what they call an extra 20,000 officers. Let's be clear about this. They're not extra at all. I know this because I was still serving at the start of austerity, and oh my goodness, did it hurt. GMP had to go down from about 8,100 officers to 6,000 right across the country, massive cuts. Some forces even got rid of their PCSOs. The numbers of PCSOs were reduced, the number of support staff was reduced, police stations were sold off, assets were sold off, the reserves were stripped down. These were tough times. This was austerity 1. Now, Conservative government over 3 years ago pledged to recruit an additional 20,000 officers. That's over and above the officers that would have been recruited anyway, to take account for people who are leaving. And typically the numbers are around 8,000, somewhere between 7,500, 8,500, let's call it 8,000 people who are leaving the police every year through retirements or resignations. So there's always going to be a churn of people coming and going, except for when they need to reduce the numbers. So how did they manage to reduce the numbers in GMP? Well, they just stopped recruiting. And quite simply, you can't make police officers redundant. You can't sack them unless they've committed an offence, criminal offence, or committed an act of gross misconduct. So you've got them for a long time. And so the only way to lose that greatest expense, which is your police officers, is to just wait for them to go and don't replace them. So the replacements came in the form of the 20,000 uplift. Some forces have hit that target already. Other forces are struggling. So the Met are struggling. They're probably going to be about 1,000 down, I think. Not quite sure whether the Home Office will extend it. My guess is they'll probably say something like, they've done a great job despite the pandemic. And because of the pandemic, we're going to extend it for another 6 months. Because the money's already been earmarked, £18 billion worth. And forces are going to feel as though it's very unfair on them to have to hand back money. So for every individual target, for every police officer not recruited that's part of that target for each individual force, forces have to pay the government back. No, it's not even back because they didn't get the money in the first place. They're going to have to pay the government £17,000. That's my understanding. Someone might be out there who's going to correct me, but my understanding is it's £17,000 per target not hit. So they never got the money in the first place. So it's a net loss to the force. Forces can't afford that. This is all leading up, by the way, to where I think recruitment's going to go. This is the backstory. And the other backstory is that the requirement to have a degree, I think, is teetering on a knife edge. Got to remember that the The government 3 years ago said that every officer will have a degree. You either have a degree before you join, either a policing degree that's recognised or any degree, or when you join you do the police constable degree apprenticeship. Some forces were given permission to continue running the old system, the initial police learning and development programme. What I'm hearing a lot of people talking about now in the Facebook group is that they were going to do the degree holder entry programme, but they're now being told it's now going to be the initial police learning and development programme, the old system. Why? Because Suella Braverman came under a lot of pressure from policing and crime commissioners in particular to say that it's not fair on people to have just 3 routes that all require a degree eventually, that there should be a 4th route in for people who aren't quite so academically minded. And I think some of the arguments behind the scenes were probably also supported by the absolutely awful satisfaction data around the academic programme. It's dreadful. The College of Policing's own survey tells us that there's massive dissatisfaction, not just a little bit, but massive dissatisfaction with the degree programme from not just the candidates, the people, the police officers going through it, but from their supervisors. Massive. It's huge. It'd be like 1 star on Trustpilot. If it was a business, it'd be collapsing at this moment. Well hidden by the College of Policing. Well done, College of Policing, but I managed to dig it out. You couldn't hide it. You couldn't hide it. So that coupled with the expense of it all, because remember the police constable degree apprenticeship is paid for already by the force being top sliced because of the apprenticeship levy. So they might as well put all of their officers through it if they can. But the problem they've got is the degree holder entry programme is paid for by them. But now they don't need to do it because Suella Braverman has given them a way out, the initial police learning and development programme. So that's why you're all being switched over to Ipple Dipple, because it's cheaper and because it's not got massive dissatisfaction ratings, because the actual College of Policing survey told us also that there's massive satisfaction when the police deliver their part of the training. Now, why do I think all of this is going to collapse? Well, because a lot of universities went into 3-year contracts to deliver the degree programme. It's 3-year contracts. They're now up for renewal. And if you're a university, would you be looking at this massive dissatisfaction and thinking, do we really want this on our books? Do we really want to be proud of this? It's not going that well. It's not going that well. No matter how much they try and hide it, it's just not going that well. And they've got to have the staff to actually deliver it. So I know in one force, I think it was either Leicestershire or Lincolnshire, forgive me if one of them is wrong, one of them is right. They had a massive disruption at the university and just the trainers just left, weren't interested anymore, bailed out, because most of them are retired police officers. They just don't have to do this unless they want to. So they've got a pension, they can go and do something else. And so they just left, and it left a whole cohort just without trainers, and they had to switch back to delivering the training as they used to. If I was at university, I'd be thinking that coupled with what's coming next. So we know that unless you're recruited by the end of March, you're not going to get any funding. We also know another 2 things to be true. There's a cost of living crisis, which means that we've got a chancellor saying that higher taxes next year and less funding for public organisations. What I think will happen, because health and education are not 2 areas at the moment that you want to start messing with. They're already teaching on a knife edge. They have been for years. Not saying the police aren't. But at the moment, we've got striking nurses, we've got striking paramedics, we've got striking doctors. In education, we've got striking teachers. It's not just for pay, it's for retention purposes. We can't keep them. They're leaving in their droves. So if we're going to squeeze the NHS and education even more, we're going to get more of what we've got now. So if I was in government, I'd be thinking, right, well, we need to be easier on them. Who can we pick on? Now, I'm not going to use the phrase pick on publicly, but who can we pick on? The police, they've just had £18 billion worth of funding. Now we want to see some results. So I think what will happen, in my predictions over the past few decades in terms of recruitment, promotion, specialist interviews, because I've been doing this now for 28 years and I've been in the service of either serving as a police officer or working in the police sector now for 38 years. I'm that old. Yeah, I know how things work. I know how funding works, and I know how I think the police are going to take a hit. I don't think it'll be a budget increase. It'll be stable budget, which in effect is a 10% plus reduction because of the impact of inflation. And then there'll be pay increases for police officers as well. So whatever happens in the public sector, the police, even though they can't strike, there's all sorts of other things they can do, like work to rule, do their job by the book. I'm not saying you don't, but this conversation emerged in the 90s. I remember a chief superintendent coming into the parade room saying, if the government continue to try and squeeze us like they are in terms of our pay, we can't strike, but we can do things like I would come in and expect all of you and tell all of you to do the full 24-point vehicle check before you take your car out on the road. And we all said, well, that would destroy the fleet. He said, you're telling me you don't do those checks? It's forced policy. You should do the 24-point vehicle check every time you take a vehicle out. And of course you all do that, don't you? Yes, boss. No, we didn't. We know if we did that, every just about 9 cars out of 10 would go off the road. If it's something really urgent, you'd take it off the road, but the full 24-point vehicle check, no way. No way. But that's the sort of thing that the police could do. Just done 24-point vehicle check, vehicle's faulty, can't go out, Sarge. Sarge be like, well, boss, what can we do? Boss, don't know. Well, foot patrol for you then. Get the bus. Things would start to collapse. Things would start to fall apart. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen, but those were discussions in the 1990s. I know, amazing. Treason. Treason, high treason going on there in the 1990s. So what's going to happen? Well, look, they're going to face that reduction in funding. So what I think will happen there is that reduction in funding will result in police forces having to slow down on recruitment. There's no way around it. There's no way around it. I'm already seeing people who had start dates in March now being given start dates in September. Now, I'm not saying every force is going to do this. Some forces are really switched on, but some of them are absolute train wrecks in terms of how they treat people. I'm not going to name the shame of the forces, but there's some out there who have people in talent pools for up to 3 years. If you hear the word talent pool, get out of it. The way to get out of it is to have the best, highest scores going. The problem with the talent pools is that people end up stuck in them. Some forces had individuals who are now in the police, they managed to get in, but they waited 2.5 years. I remember one of them saying, I could have done my degree in the time I've waited to actually get this position. Now, I hope it doesn't go back to that. I really sincerely hope it doesn't go back to that. Because if it goes back to that, these were not days that police recruitment teams should have been proud of. I think some forces will go down that road because they're going to have to make cuts. I might be wrong, I hope I'm wrong, but I think they're going to have to make cuts. Some forces will not be in a position to make those cuts because they've still not hit their recruitment targets. Bearing in mind that even if they don't hit the 20,000 uplift target, they've still got to have a certain number of officers to manage and deliver. And if you scour the internet, as I do, we find forces like West Midlands Police, Merseyside Police, where their chief officers and policing and crime commissioners are talking about budget crisis already. They were talking about that in 2022, before we had this massive increase in inflation. So where's it going to end up, folks? Sadly, I think our boom days of recruitment are coming to an end. Depending on the force, I think we may see some forces continuing to recruit as they did during the last austerity. Kent Constabulary as an example. They just kept recruiting all the time. They must have been losing so many officers to have such a big recruitment drive. I've never seen such a big recruitment poster as the one I saw in Kent. It covered the whole of the side of the police station. It was something like 60 feet long. It was massive. And they recruited all the way through austerity, whereas other forces, like my old force, GMP, they stopped recruiting for a couple of years, and then they opened up recruitment, but only internally, and only for 40 a year, 40. That's not even scratching the surface. So I hope it doesn't go back to that. I've got a feeling it won't go back to anything as bad as that. Because it's a bit of an own goal, isn't it, really, to recruit all these additional officers and then just lose them all? Doesn't make any sense whatsoever, does it? But I think we're going to see a big slowdown in police recruitment. That's inevitable anyway, because you've not got the 20,000 uplift. But I think what would be left, we're going to go from about 15, 16,000 a year to about 7 or 8,000. That's what it would have been. But if we take into consideration budget cuts that the force is going to have to make, I think that might reduce from 7 or 8,000 down to 4 or 5,000 is my guess, is my educated guess. So we'll have to see, won't we? We'll have to see. I'll keep updating you, and I'll keep listening and watching what you're writing about what's happening to you. My suggestion at the moment is try and pin forces down when they say things like September, right, what date? And how many are waiting for that date? And how many intakes are there going to be? Because you could just do the simple math, can't you? There's going to be 2 intakes, each one of 25 officers. That's 50 officers. How many are in the pool? I don't think they're going to tell you that. Or if they tell you that, no, you're in the pool and you're pretty much guaranteed a position, right, could you put that in writing for me? I don't think they will, because I've seen in the past intakes just get cancelled. I'm not going to name and shame the forces. I could. But some gave people notice that the intake was cancelled with less than 4 weeks' notice. People had given their notice at work and moved halfway across the country for their dream job, only to be told, sorry, there's no intake. And if anyone's out there, I know there's people in HR and recruitment in the Facebook group. If anyone wants to get in touch and say, no, that didn't happen. Yes, it did. It did happen. And people were in massively huge talent pools. And they did wait for 2.5 to 3 years. And some forces had the audacity to write to them at the end of that 2.5 to 3 years and say, your vetting, medical, everything is all run out. No. And we haven't actually got a place for you. So my other advice is to start applying to other forces. If you can, apply to other forces. And don't take any nonsense from your home force that says you can't apply to any other forces. You can only keep your application with us. College of Policing Guidance came out about 2 years ago. You can apply for as many forces as you want. I've got clients who've got applications in with several forces. One of them had applications in with 8 forces. 8 forces. And they picked the best offer. They picked the one that they thought was the best force. So if you can do that, try and get something in writing, try and pin them down. This whole vague, the things I'm hearing at the moment, this vague sort of, I've been told it might be September, or it'll certainly be sometime in 23, 24. That's nonsense. Come on, better planning forces, better planning is needed here. And I know what you're going to say, well, we don't know what the budget constraints are going to be, or we've not been given a final budget, or we don't know what the final numbers are going to be. And there's the problem. There's the problem. Some forces recruit just the right number, some forces over-recruit, and that's when people end up in talent pools. Only way at the talent pool is by your scores in your online assessment centre and in your interview. A stated case from Cheshire about 6 or 7 years ago, when Cheshire were taking people out the talent pool, which were the people who wanted to help them become a more diverse force. And they got taken to tribunal for that, industrial tribunal, and the judge said, you can't just treat everyone as passing, because it's lawful, if everyone's got the same pass mark, it's lawful then to select someone who is underrepresented in the force. But you can't do that because you've given everyone marks. So you can't just say everyone's got a pass, which is what they did. You've got to actually take the people who've got the highest scoring marks. So if any forces try those shenanigans again, they're likely to end up at tribunal because there's already a stated case around it. So there you go, folks. It's the not the news a lot of you want to hear. The good news, I think, is that a lot of you are still in the pipeline now to get in by the end of March. I know one of my clients has got a start date of, I think it's the 30th of March, something like that. It's like one day before the uplift finishes. Wow. Just wow. And I know that people are being called for their online assessment centre and interview all at once. So we've got to be prepared for that as well. I'll keep in touch, folks. I'll keep going live for you. And if any of you have got any comments, questions, please do message me. And if any of you are from HR and you've got an inside track, or you want to feel as though we can better communicate things, a message out there, because at the moment the chat forums are full of people just going, I've been delayed, I've not made March, I've been told I'm a nipple dipple, what on earth is going on? Again, big problem in forces. Comms is awful. Get your comms better, get your messaging better, because all that happens is people go to different forces or they select a completely different career altogether, because no one's going to wait 2.5 years. If you're 18, that's like most of your life, isn't it? No, don't expect people to do that. Anyway, I'll catch up with you soon, folks. I look forward to speaking to you very soon. If, like I said, any questions, please do drop me a line. If you're watching this on the replay, if you want to ask any questions, just put them in the comments. Just say, hey, Brendan, ask the question, I will come back to you. I'll catch up with you soon. Bye-bye for now.